Hi everyone. It's so nice to see everybody and come to an in-person event at last, so it's wonderful to be here. So my name is Matthew Jamieson. I'm going to talk about some of the research that we've done at the University of Glasgow in the last, actually over the last 10 years, and particularly about a feasibility trial that we just finished over the last couple of years. And that's looking at a memory aid for people with memory difficulties after acquired brain injury. And that's also to do with an app that we've developed called ApplTree, which is a smartphone app to allow people to set reminders that has various features in it that we've developed based on the research we've done in acquired brain injury rehabilitation. So memory difficulties are common after acquired brain injury and can make everyday life difficult. So it might be hard to keep track of what's happening, hard to plan for the future, and difficult to follow up on future intentions. And in rehabilitation, people can be supported with this by prompting to help their memory and their task sequencing, and by helping people to learn new memory and planning strategies. And so planning strategies might be things like a wall calendar, a diary, these kind of pencil and paper strategies to help people think about what they need to do, write it down and keep track of their everyday tasks. Technology can also be used for this purpose to support people with memory and with following through on intentions. And so this can be things like going to appointments, shopping, medication, and just everyday life tasks. So smartphone apps like calendars and alarms are commonly used in the general population to help with memory and to help kind of ensure that you don't forget things. There is research that's shown that in brain injury rehabilitation, using these kind of technologies that can actively prompt, and so it's a phone, you carry it around with you, it's going to prompt you at the right time, that has an advantage over something like the wall calendars or the diaries that you have to remember to check. So we've found from the past research, sort of looking at all the papers that have investigated this kind of assistive technology, there is a big advantage to using this kind of technology as opposed to something like a diary or a calendar, or along with those kind of strategies. Unfortunately, the technology is often not used as it could be, especially in brain injury rehabilitation, and there are reasons why this technology might be difficult to use. So there's lots of reasons why it might be hard to use in practice. So I'll just go through three of them that we've found in the research we've done. So people may forget to use this kind of technology and not actually use it in the first place, or not think to use it. People may miss information out when they're entering reminders or enter the wrong information. And people may find it difficult to learn to use in the first place. So I'll just go through three of these with a little bit of the feedback that we've got from previous studies. So people may forget to use technology or not think to use it. So we did some focus groups with people with acquired brain injury and caregivers. And just one quote up at the top here from somebody who's a caregiver for someone with acquired brain injury. They were talking about the use of memory strategies. And they said it's sometimes just he doesn't want to use it because he thinks he'll remember. So their family member didn't use these kind of compensatory technologies because they thought they would remember, but then often forgot everyday tasks. And then another piece of feedback is somebody said, with an acquired brain injury, said, I forget I don't remember, then I remember I forget. So forget that you need the prompt in the first place, and then obviously once the appointment or something passes and you've missed it, you realize that you needed that prompt to help you. Another reason why it might be difficult to use these kind of technologies is if you get the information that you put into them wrong, then you're not going to get the best use out of the technology. So say if you're using a calendar app and you don't put in all of the information you need to about the task you want to do, so you get the time wrong for the appointment, or you don't give yourself enough time to get ready before you go to a doctor's appointment, then that app isn't going to be as useful as it could be. So we did a study where we looked at entering reminders into Google Calendar and just to see what the kind of accuracy is of that reminder entry. And on the right here is the kind of 100% accuracy in that study of the reminders we asked people to set. And then on the left is an example of what somebody set in this study. And obviously you can see there's a disparity there, and if you're missing information when you enter reminders, then you're not going to get the benefit of that prompt. And then another key piece of feedback when we were doing studies asking people about these kind of technologies is just how steep the learning curve is in the first place. So people might find it difficult to use. And if you are opening up an app or something on a web screen and it looks like this, it can be really difficult to think, okay, I'm going to use that or even know how to start to kind of use it to support your memory. And so that was the feedback we got here, was too busy a page for whatever you're looking at, it puts people off. So over the past 10 years or so, we've done focus groups with people with acquired brain injury, app design sessions, survey studies, and studies investigating reminder setting. And we have developed ApplTree, which is an app that has features in it that aim to overcome some of these difficulties with using these technologies. So I'll just go through three kind of key features that we've incorporated into this app that hopefully can overcome some of those difficulties. So unsolicited or push prompting to encourage use. Changing the user interface of the technology when you're actually entering the reminders to what we call narrow deep user interface to improve the reminder entry accuracy. And then co-designed decision trees. So this is to try to make that opening screen of the app and the experience of starting to use it as easy as possible and sort of inviting to someone to use it. So I'll go through these. So the unsolicited prompts, this is just if you've got a smartphone, you know you've got a lot of apps on there, and it can be hard to actually go in and start using an app. So unsolicited prompts are just a feature that the app prompts you before you go into the app to say, do you need to set any reminders? And when you get this, you can either get rid of the notification, or you can go in and actually set the reminder from there. So it's just trying to be more proactive and prompting people to think about whether they have any things they need to remember. And the idea behind that is that it can overcome that kind of initial difficulty remembering to set reminders. So then we looked at the user interface to try to make it easy to set reminders without making any errors or missing any information that might be really important when you're getting that reminder. So generally, if you use a calendar app that's on your phone, you open it up and start setting a reminder, you'll get a scrolling screen that you have to go up and down, and that has all the information that you need to set for a reminder in one screen. And that can be good in some ways because you've got all that information in front of you and you can go through the reminder really quickly and set it. But we're also, in the research we were doing, finding that led to errors and people were making mistakes and not setting everything they needed to for the reminder. And so that kind of screen is on the left here, and we call that a broad, shallow user interface. And then on the right is the narrow, deep user interface that is a sort of alternative to this. This is where you have every bit of information you need for a reminder on one screen, and you just go through step by step. So for this example, it's an appointment. You put the appointment name, the date, the time, the duration, notification, everything, every step of the way you're asked to enter that information, and it makes it less likely that you'd miss information as you're setting it. And we did a study with 32 people with acquired brain injury using both of these user interfaces, and found that people made significantly fewer errors. They missed less information when they used the narrow, deep user interface rather than the scrolling one. And the scrolling one is the one that you tend to find on apps that you download from the App Store. And the final feature we've incorporated and looked at is what we call decision trees. So this is, the purpose behind this is just to have a nice opening screen that makes it obvious what you need to do to set a reminder. So that's in the top left here. You see that in the app, you have 6 different types of reminders to choose from: appointment, shopping, birthday, medication, social event, and other. And you can choose which type of reminder you want. And that's kind of like the trunk of the tree, and then each type of reminder is a different branch of that. So when you select medication, it'll go through the things you need to enter to get a medication reminder. And if you put birthday, it'll ask slightly different things to go through that information. So that's where the kind of decision tree and the branches metaphor comes. And we co-designed this in Graham Anderson House with the staff there to come up with how we should word the different branches of this decision tree and what information should be there. So the example on the screen is a medication reminder, and you can go through each step to set a medication. Something that is specific about medication is that you can set lots of times for one reminder. So say you wanted to take medication in the morning and the evening, you can set that within one notification, so you don't have to keep going into the app to set more reminders. Okay, so these are the sort of 3 features that we put in based on some of the research that we've done, and then had ApplTree as this kind of tool to test some of the hypotheses we had. And these are the research questions we then had. Is it feasible to introduce an app like this in a community brain injury rehabilitation setting? What influences the use of reminding apps in community brain injury rehabilitation? And how does an app with the features that are in ApplTree compare with a sort of market-leading reminder app? And we chose Google Calendar as that comparator. How do they compare as rehab tools? So that leads me to the feasibility trial that we've just completed. And we included people with memory difficulties after acquired brain injury. A total of 39 signed up for the study, and 19 completed it. We tracked their memory before and after being shown how to use a reminder app, and half the participants were given ApplTree and half were given Google Calendar. This is the participation criteria, so it was adults with acquired brain injury and self or other reported memory difficulties. And then our exclusion criteria covered the things to make sure that the participants were able to do the study tasks and had a phone that was compatible with the apps. So 4 services were involved, many of whom are here today. The Community Treatment Centre for Brain Injury, Acquired Brain Injury Service in Western Bartonshire, Quarriers, Renfrewshire Brain Injury Service, and Graham Anderson House were involved. So for participants that took part in the study, we asked them to do a memory log. So we gave them a ring binder that had the several weeks of sheets like this that had memory tasks, and they could put in for each day what they intended to do. And we'd set that up for a week at a time. So people would put in what do they need to do for each day for a week. And then the idea was each evening people would look through this and say, did they do the task? Did they do it on time? And did somebody need to remind them? And this was our way of trying to track whether people were, how good people were at following up the intentions that they had. And then we also added in a text time measure, so we got them to text a number at various times, just as an extra memory task to throw in. So they did that baseline phase for 3 weeks, and then they were either given ApplTree or Google Calendar. And they were randomly selected to have either app. To get the app, they went to a video tutorial session, and this trial began pre-pandemic, so it was an in-person session we were able to do at the start, and then after the break for lockdown and coming back to the study, it was an over-the-phone session that we did. And that involved the participants bringing their smartphone and watching a video that we made that showed how to use the app. And that was a 30-minute video, which we had one for Google Calendar and one for ApplTree. And then there was a rehab support worker there in a supervisory role for the video, who would then give them an app setting assignment. So they would say, give them practice reminders to do, and that would also be a check to see whether somebody could independently set reminders, having watched the video and had a practice. So it was just an hour-long session that we gave people for either one of the apps, whatever they'd been randomized to. So this is an overview of the study design. So people were screened for their eligibility to the study. Then they were, that was by the services we worked with. Then they were referred to us and enrolled. And then there was a 3-week baseline phase, followed by them being randomized into the trial. We initially aimed to have 25 in each group, but didn't get that number. But that's part of the feasibility to find out how many people would take part. Then we had a 6-week gap where they just had the app, and then we did a follow-up, which was the same as the baseline phase, so we just looked at memory again. So really just looking at memory before and after getting this app. So we were interested, for the feasibility study, we were interested in how many people were referred to us from the services and how many finished each stage of the study, because acceptability of this kind of assistive technology is a really important research question. We want to know how many people want to use this. And we were also interested in how well people learned to use the app and if they kept using it, and what people thought of the app as well, and the feedback that they gave. So this is our results in terms of participation, of how many people came through the study. So 285 service users were considered, and it was over 2 years that we ran this study. About a year of that was before the pandemic and lockdowns that brought, and then another year or so after that. So 285 service users were considered, and in total 63 were referred to us. So that kind of shows how many were not meeting the inclusion criteria, or didn't meet the exclusion, or did meet an exclusion criteria. And then about half of the people considered did actually meet the criteria, but many of them either they didn't have much engagement with the service, or they informed staff they didn't want to take part, or they couldn't be contacted. So lots of people sort of left even though, or weren't contacted by us even though they did meet the criteria. Okay, so in the end, 39 people were enrolled in the study, 21 received the app, and 19 fully completed the study. 10 received ApplTree and 10 got Google Calendar. So in terms of app use, The session, it was just an hour-long session, and that was sufficient for 90% of the participants that took part in that session to learn how to use the reminding app. So that's either Google Calendar or ApplTree. And 79% of them were still using it 2 months later. So that's right at the end of the study. 79% were still using the app. And the 2 participants who didn't pass the app assignments both received Google Calendar. So obviously really small numbers, so it's hard to tell whether that was to do with the app or whether it was just to do with the randomization of who got which app. So we got lots of nice results of the feedback about what made the apps usable and what made the apps useful. And the kind of headline thing here was that the features that we put in AppleTree were, people talked about those in the AppleTree group and liked those. So this is some feedback from someone who got AppleTree and said he quite often forgets to set reminders and the prompts make him think, oh no, but wait a minute, there's something I should be doing today right now. So it wasn't that he always went into the app and set a reminder from getting this prompt, but it did remind him to think about the tasks he needed to do. And we also got some feedback about the design. So somebody said it's the step-by-step design was easier doing it one bit at a time instead of all at once. So the main conclusions, the feasibility trial, we wanted to use that information about the referral and recruitment to know how many people we'd need to recruit in a full-scale trial in order to conclusively answer if how AppleTree is compared to Google Calendar, what's the effectiveness of this. And we know that we would need to have 72 people fully complete that trial. The short app intervention given to participants in this trial seemed to be feasible to implement in practice, and people learned how to use the app and kept using it. And features that have been developed and researched in AppleTree can improve user experience for people with memory difficulties after acquired brain injury. So there was some promising findings about the features that we have developed. So our future aim is to do a larger scale trial and really answer, does AppleTree and the features described actually improve memory more than Google Calendar? So that's the next step. And we're also interested in what influences the use of reminding apps in practice. So what can we change to get more people to want to get this kind of intervention and to use an app to help them. So this is the information about how many people we'd need to recruit in a full trial, working backwards from the feasibility study results. So if we wanted 72 people to fully complete the study, we'd have to randomize 110, refer 240, and have 1,100 service users considered. So we'd have to scale up quite a lot in order to get that, to sort of fully answer that question that we have. And as well as that larger trial, I think it's important to think about sort of future areas of work with this kind of assistive technology. So I think it would be really interesting to link in carers and family members into an app, because often they are the memory support for people, and if they could also use an app, that could be a really big help. And then can apps and technologies facilitate and improve access to rehabilitation? And can we cater the apps to meet individual needs? And these are some questions that we're looking at with a company, NewMind, who've developed the Alfred app, and they're really interested in these kind of questions. Okay, so I just need to thank all the co-authors on this work and all of the collaborators. So Professor Jonathan Evans is the principal investigator. Dr. Breda Cullen, Professor Stephen Brewster, Dr. Marilyn Lennon, and Heather McClelland. And then our clinical teams, as I say, some of whom are here today. So just really want to thank them for all of their hard work, helping us recruit people and doing the intervention sessions too. The funding was provided by Chief Scientist's Office, and I also just want to thank all the participants in all the studies that we've done, because we couldn't have done this research without them. And then the last screen is just the information about the app. If you are interested, you can try it out, and it's on the iOS App Store and Android Google Play stores. And if you do want to try it out, you can email me and I'll give you a login to go into it. So, thanks very much.
Thank you very much, Matthew, and it was great to know that you've worked with groups that are recognised for supporting people with a head injury. Is there any questions for Matthew? Any questions? Yes, I've got one here.
Is there any way there is voice recognition to work with that for clients?
So we don't have that in the app at the moment, but I think that is a really good thing that we could look at, because and we do have a colleague who just finished his PhD, Aris, at computing science, and he was looking at voice-activated, or the kind of Alexa-type device, and setting reminders that way, because it could be quite a quick way to set reminders rather than going through an app and having to set it that way. So I think it is a really good thing to look at as well. Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Any other? Helen?
Is this app provided for people who just come out of hospital notifications, along with diary, calendar, sticky paper? I know I was told years ago, I've been back for 16 years, and this wasn't heard then. But are people now provided with this information?
Not for ApplTree specifically. I guess that's part of why we want to do the full trial, because then we can get the evidence base that can lead to it being something that, you know, either ApplTree or an app with those features to say these are things that help, and have that. Thanks.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you so much. Could you please give Matthew another round of applause? Thank you.